Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Chris Tobin went to the CCBE last week. In fact, he broadcast live from there, but didn't have a chance to report on some of the other cool things that he saw. So Chris is reporting on that. I was at the SBE Annual Awards Dinner last night, and some great people were honored by the SBE. We'll have information on that and wireless mics and more, all coming up on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store, with outstanding service, saving, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By the new Ruby console from Lavo. See Lavo in your future at lavo.com/TWiRT. And by the Telos Alliance, shaping the future of audio, inspiring you to create the most exciting and engaging audio experiences imaginable. Visit telosalliance.com/opt-in. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. And by the way, I'm going to get some more light bulbs. I know I'm still rebuilding the one. It's over there. My garage is tired of looking at it, and I'll rebuild it. And an engineer here in Nashville, where I live, has offered up a couple of bulbs off of their tower. They recently, 6 years ago, they put some strobes and such on the tower. So he says, "Hey, these are taking up room. I'll give you a couple." So anyway, we may have a red light back over there at some point. All right. Hey, today we're talking about a number of different engineering things. We're going to kind of tie up some loose ends and have some conversation about stuff that's been on my mind and stuff that's been on Chris's mind. So speaking of Chris, let's bring him in from somewhere in the New York City area. Chris Tobin. Hey, you're in the studio. Welcome in, Chris.
I'm in studio in Newark. It's a news production studio, so just relaxing, having a good time. Yep, it's good stuff.
So here in Nashville, we're finally had a break from all the silly rain that we've had, days and days and days of it. And it's beautiful here. It's really nice. In fact, this weekend, going camping with the Cub Scouts. So we'll be tenting Friday night and Saturday night at what's it, Boxwell Scout Camp. It's about a 45-minute drive outside of Nashville, and it's a beautiful scout camp. I don't think we have Wi-Fi there, Chris.
You going to be patrol cooking, or you have a fire? How are you guys doing the food?
I think people bring hot dogs and hamburgers or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we're having fresh venison, if that's what you're asking.
No. There's different techniques for patrol cooking, where you go to the kitchen area of a campsite. Not the campsite itself, but an administrative building. Get your food packaged, and you bring it back to your tent, and then you go from there.
Oh, okay. Well, the tents are near a building. It's general meeting hall, but there's it's a big cabin, like a lodge building, and there's a number of them. There may be a dozen of them on the reservation. So I don't know much about it. I went last year. Went last year and suffered through the long walks to the potty. It's over in the middle of the night. Yeah. And me and the other dads. So I'm one of the oldest dads there for sure, because I've got a young kid. I'm 56 and I've got an 8-year-old. Most of the other dads are in their 30s. So
you come with experience to the table.
What? No, I come with old man problems. They don't. But we didn't. The show isn't This Week in Old Man Health. So.
Old man problem.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah. All right. When did we lose control of the show?
When you start talking about scouting.
So coming up on this show, Chris, you've got some. Last week you were at CCBE, but our guest was Anthony Kazub, and we didn't have time really to get into other stuff that you found out there, that you talked about, maybe some new things. So we're going to get into that right off the bat here. You've got some pictures to share from CCBE in Canada. And then I just came back this morning from the Society of Broadcast Engineers annual membership meeting. And so I've got a little bit of reporting to do from that. There's too much going on for me to report everything, but I got to tell you, your SBE is hard at work. Both from the administrative staff side, the staff in Indianapolis, and all the people who volunteer their time on various committees, committee chair people, and it's really, you've got good people looking after your interest if you're a broadcast engineer. So I'm gonna give a couple more plugs during the hour for the Society of Broadcast Engineers. But right now, we're going to hear from our first sponsor. And I think we're going to hear from my friends at Omnia about the Omnia Volt. Let's take a look. We'll be right back.
More top radio stations choose Omnia than all other competing processors combined. Now meet the Omnia Volt, sharing lineage with Omnia processors like the Omnia 11, electrifying, competitive, market-leading audio in a compact one-rack unit package. With Omnia heritage built in, the Omnia Volt includes Dynamics Magic from Omnia Chief Algorithm Designer Cornelius Gould, including 6 AGC sections from start to finish, deep bass, warmth, and stereo enhancers, 5-band time-aligned limiter, the world's best presets to get you started right, and spectrally pristine final processing designed by Frank Foti. Omnia Volt users love its Quick Tweak feature. Quick Tweak distills years of processing knowledge and proven approaches into simple controls that turn you into a processing pro. Nail your signature sound in minutes using advanced presets or your own settings right from the Volt's front panel or a PC. Omnia Volt brings charisma to your station's audio. FM translators and low-power FM stand out among the crowd. AM stations maximize clarity and coverage. Digital broadcasts sound clear and musical without fatiguing artifacts. Smart design, clearly visible outside and inside. Input and output connections in analog, AES3, Livewire, and multiplex for FM. Automatic input selection handles redundant STLs. Remote control works with today's browsers, tablets, and smartphones. Idealized patch point for external watermarking. And hardened construction to withstand lightning strikes, surges, high RF fields, and harsh conditions.
The new Omnia Volt is stunning. Everyone will know you've got an Omnia on your station.
Omnia Volt is versatile too. DSP Core firmware alters the personality of Volt to fit your changing needs. FM, AM, digital transmission, or studio processing. Volt can even be used as a standalone stereo generator. DSP cores aren't extra cost add-ons. Download the functionality you need for free. The Omnia Volt. Omnia audio processing for any station, and a smart upgrade for aspiring broadcasters. Proven audio processing that'll leave your competitors in the dust.
And besides the Omnia Volt, which of course is a fabulous processor for a low price, I got to remind you, the Omnia 11 is now up to version 3.5 for the GeForce software. It's gives you a whole new processor. It is just amazing. And the Omnia 9 has hardware upgrades available. Plus, if you buy a new Omnia 9 now, it comes with those hardware upgrades. What an amazing processor. And at my stations, a couple of them, I've got the Omnia 7, and I love that box too. It's really value priced and amazing performance. So check out all the good stuff at TeloSalliance.com and look for Omnia audio processors. Hey, you've just tuned into This Week in Radio Tech. It's Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tobin. And Chris, last week you came to us from the CCBE, but it was mostly our friend Anthony doing the talking. So why don't you fill us in on what happened? I'm glad you're back, by the way. Glad you made a safe trip back.
Why, thank you. Yes. Well, it's CCBE, for those of you who don't know. It's the Central Canada Broadcast Engineers Conference. Actually, the official, I think, corporate name is Central Canada Broadcast Engineers, Technologists, and Technicians for the charter, and just to be correct. CCBE.ca is the website, so I just give that up front. I've gone for the last 7 years to this conference. It's a lot of fun, both from the technical paper standpoint and the evening hospitality suites and the networking, if you will. So those are the two reasons that you should attend. It's also now just outside of Toronto in King City, and it's very convenient. So those of you who want to do day trips that are up in the local area, now you can do a day trip, compared to where years past it was in Barrie, Ontario, which was a good long drive from anywhere civilized. So you either made the weekend or you didn't. So that being said,
this is this open to U.S. engineers? Can somebody from the U.S. register and go next year?
Oh yeah, and that's how I wound up. You know, there's several.
But you're a speaker too, and I've been a speaker there as well. But even if you're not a speaker, you can register and go.
Oh yes,
okay.
I had the pleasure of presenting a paper up there and talking with folks, and I come every year, and it's great. And it actually this year, Adam Robinson, I believe is his name. He's the gentleman. He's one of the executives of the CCB who handled the papers and the topics. He with Chris Robitaille, the two of them are on the papers committee, if you will. And this year, they did a different format, which was great. I thought it worked out really well, and the topics were excellent. less number of papers as in the years past, but I think that actually helped to make the attendance at all the papers more important, and it worked. It worked well. I thought it was great.
Well, if I can ask you one question about CCB, I've been to it, and I think I know the answer to this question, but it's been a few years. How is, as an engineer, how is going to CCBE different than going to, say, a regional show like Wisconsin Broadcasters or the NAB and their broadcast engineering conference? Do you have a different feel at CCBE?
There is a different feel. In Canada, they do things slightly different, in a good way. And it's also, it gives you an opportunity to see how what we're accustomed to here in the States as a broadcaster, a U.S. broadcaster, how things are done or interpreted in Canada. And, they have different rules and regulations regarding stuff. They have Safety Code 6, which is from, is it Canada Health or Health Canada? And that's the equivalent to ROET 65, RFR exposure, right? Radio frequency radiation exposure. And their approach to it is slightly different than we do it. Both very, very strict and stringent as far as how you apply it and how you certify and whatnot. But it was interesting listening to that presentation. It was done by a gentleman by the name of Francois Gauthier. Did I say his name? I never get it right. I apologize. But he owns and operates Octave Communications, and he is one of the top speakers in RFR coverage and transmitters and RF in general. It was a great presentation, and he missed his calling. It was a great comedy as far as some of the comments he made in talking of technical stuff. So it was very good. But he touched on topics just as we would here in the States and explain the difficulties of how do you say that this area at your transmitter site is controlled or restricted or not restricted, public exposure, non-public exposure, all the various things that you have to go with, and a lot of similarities to what we have here. So I enjoyed that because I could look at it and compare it, because I'm working on a project that's currently involving RFR. So I'm like, okay, this is how they approach it. This is how we approach it. And it's interesting where they meet in the middle, and it does work and does come out the same way. So it was good. It was nice feel for that.
In case people are interested, I found this Safety Code 6 on the web, and I'll put a link to that in our show notes so people can, it does read a lot like what is it? Is it OET 65 for the US?
OET 65 for the US, yes.
Yeah.
And, and from what I'm told, Francois is preparing a smaller version of the paper, smaller in size, for the CCBE website. So he's confident he'll have something for people to review. So I strongly suggest anybody who's involved in a multi-site or a transmitter site that requires, some restrictions of RFR because of proximity to the public, the paper's well worth reviewing and reading up on. And you could also call him, and for a small price, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to help you out. So he's a certified professional engineer, so he can definitely do a lot of things that you may need.
So would you say there was a theme to the CCB conference, or are they pretty wide-ranging in their topics?
It's wide-ranging. I mean, they did ATSC 3.0. They did production for streaming and video stuff for social media. Bill Ammons was there from Micronetics talking about antenna design, and his discussion dovetailed pretty much with Francois for Safety Code 6 as far as RF getting to the ground, getting to the rooftop, exposure, and how your antenna designs can be done to minimize it. And he approached it from a standpoint of what they don't teach you in the books for antenna design is something else they do, which was fascinating. It was actually talking about varying the wavelength between the bays. How we know you have, say, full wave or half wave. He was talking about other ones in between and demonstrated through simulations how the RF hits the ground and where it moves in the nulls, and where you could possibly use it. He mentioned a couple of sites here in the States that they applied this to meet an RFR condition because of residents that were near the tower site. It was a fascinating paper. I was like, wow, this is, and definitely if you're into RF or you're an RF person and you're familiar with antenna design and all the various things, you could watch this and listen to him speak about it and go, wow, I never thought that was even possible. And then he talks about the physics involved in RF, and there was the fascinating part because Bill's very low key. He just says it real simple. He says, "Here's a picture of a gentleman standing on an antenna. That's a VHF antenna. It's VHF low. Notice the size of the elements are the same size as him. It's like that's your antenna. So if you want to put something like that up on a tower, there's going to be a lot of weight, a lot of wind load. You might want to reconsider how you approach this." And you sit there going, "Okay, good point. You're right. The guy is standing on he's right there on the antenna." It's like, wow. And then they talked about the UHF antennas that a lot of stations are using for the repack and how to create the nulls and how to prevent RFR issues or just providing better signal strength. Speaking of his paper, Bill Ammons from Micronetics, last year at CCB, he talked about the benefits of understanding your nulls, understanding your radiation pattern from an antenna for TV, for ATSC transmissions, digital television, and explaining why you need to understand the patterns and how they work and how much RF actually makes it into your city of license or where you want it to be. And in the world of digital, we all know that mobile bit error rate is key. And he explained in his papers, they're still up on their website, Micronetics. It's a great paper on the whole thing about the signal strength and RF intensity and understanding what works and doesn't work. Again, I go to this show and these are the things you come up with. It's like, oh, okay, something I haven't come across in a long time. So that's two papers there that was involved, and there was another one with ATSC3 with the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and their deployment of it, and same to what we're pretty similar to what we have going on here in the States. So that one was very, very familiar.
Cool. I'm sorry, I was looking up the Micronetics site. I'll see if I can find a good page to link to.
I can always send
from there as well. You mentioned, I believe I heard you say the word repack. Is Canada doing similar repacking on the TV bands as the U.S.
Yes, they have a repack process going on. Kirk Nesbitt from CAB, the Canadian Association of Broadcasters, I hope that's right, Canadian Association of Broadcasting, did an update at one of the papers and talked about how they too, like we are, they're applying for reimbursement, government support in that fashion. From what I was told by one or two of the broadcast TV engineers, the frequency bands that they operate in currently, not all of them are impacted by the T-Mobile or AT&T or any of the changing of frequencies. Most of them operate already in the lower portion below where we are impacted. But there is some repack going on. I'm guessing it's probably for folks that are near the U.S. border, that kind of thing. Other than that, it's they're having issues too. They too have to figure out stuff, and that was where there's presentation on tower design and structural concerns. Some stations are going for the antenna that's either larger or smaller, and the weight changes and the position on the tower. And then, as a result, certain regulations, just like here in the States, you have to recertify the structural integrity of the tower now that you're making a change.
Yeah,
that's important.
Well, the repack. I won't take much time here, but the TV repack was a topic talked about today at our SBE meeting here in Nashville. We kind of had an open meeting. I was going to be the speaker, and then we didn't get the meeting room at the restaurant like we usually get. There's a bunch of people in there, and somehow we didn't get it. So that's okay. It was really practice for my Madison, Wisconsin presentation. But Gibson Pritchard of Channel 5 here in Nashville, WTVF, Gibson. And I think he's been a guest on the show before. Gibson told us about the repack from his point of view, and just where his station WTVF fell in the whole thing. It's like phase 6, but man, everything affects everything. Just when you get all these TV stations all packed down, you give up all that real estate, that RF real estate, then man, things start to affect each other a lot. And the scheduling is just amazing. They had to have some crazy algorithms to figure out the scheduling, and then we have people working crazy hours to try to meet that scheduling. But you're in if now's a good time, you're going to talk to us about how the repack affects wireless microphone operating. And in fact, I was talking with some folks from T-Mobile last night at the SBE Awards dinner in Boston. And they were telling me some technical things about why it's such a problem to have wireless mics, and what are we going to do? I mean, there's churches, there's schools, there's sports stadium, high school sports, and there's all kinds of people using wireless mics that don't really have a good way to become aware that maybe their wireless mic is no longer allowed to be used, and that's going to be, I think, quite a challenge. Broadcasters are aware of this, and they may grumble a bit, but they'll follow the law and get new frequencies for their wireless mics. But I don't know about all these people that are users that aren't plugged in. Do you have any clues about that, Chris?
Well, the best way to approach it is if your wireless microphone frequencies are above 608 megahertz, 608 megahertz, then you need to move. That's the best way to put it. Anything below 608 megahertz currently is available for wireless microphones, but it's also available for TV stations to be repacked too. which is the case here in New York City. So
Mhm.
it's going to be an interesting time. I'm actually working with somebody through a friend of mine's company to help them replace their wireless mics that currently, several of them are still functional, but barely, because they're now being occupied by TV stations from the Repack.
Oh.
I did a spectrum
So-
analysis. I took a
Mhm.
snapshot of the spectrum, and you see these little humps, little pilot carrier. I'm like, that's digital TV. Oh, that's a digital TV. Oh, there's another one.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, look, that's where your wireless mic is, just on the trailing edge of their waveform. No wonder you're getting those sporadic hits. And it's just like a mess. So I've been looking at an alternative technology. It's actually pretty cool. Talking to the CTO president of the company at AES in a couple of weeks. It's using 6.5 gigahertz for a wireless microphone. It uses TDMA technology, so it's a time slot technology for the microphones. And the way they're implementing it, the way it's being done, I think is pretty cool. It's currently in use by a sports broadcaster here in New York City. It was used at the US Open, and it works really well. So I'm going to throw that on the table for my buddy's company and say, hey, look at this, see if it's worth it. And the cost is pretty close to what you'd spend probably for a conventional UHF wireless microphone system now. And then
I wonder if we could get
IFB.
If we could get this CTO of this company on the show to explain the TDMA technology and how that works and how many mics can work on a channel and all that kind of thing.
I already have got that in the works. I'm moving in that direction. Yeah. They're a little on the side of the fence at the moment, because I think the technology is still new. They're still working with a major microphone manufacturer who's providing the funding for them. So by AES, I'm sure I'll find out more of what's going on. And then the other side of the equation for the studio, because it's a performance space, are the belt packs, the production, stage manager, headsets, that kind of thing. And those belt packs too are in the UHF, and the particular brand and band spread that they're using. Unfortunately, the manufacturer says they'll be discontinuing the process of that unit in 3 months. So you're dead in the water. So I'm looking at a replacement that operates in the 1.9 gigahertz spectrum. And it also uses the DECT technology, which is what you see in your cordless phones. It's used in cellular phones in parts of Europe. And so far on paper, it looks really good. Talking to a few end users, it seems to function. But both technologies require a completely new approach to how you do your comms. Both systems operate with Dante, so you can connect and interconnect with Dante. They also one of them uses access points technology, but not the same access point you may use at home, but similar principles. So you can set up the access points, think of them as multi-channel receiver points, hop spots around your studios. It's a fascinating approach. You have to rethink everything. You just, when I was talking with the wireless mic company, the CTO and president, she was trying to explain to me how she gets calls from broadcasters saying, okay, so what's the RF power? What's the antenna pattern? What do I have to do? And she's like, no. It's a TDMA. There is the power is bursts. It's not a continuous wave. It's like cell phones. If you ever hear a cell phone, it's PC speakers that bzzz, it's bursts. The burst of data channel slots. It's TDMA. There's a whole different approach. You don't think of it in terms of a Yagi antenna stuck in your studio or shark fins, as you always call them.
Yeah.
So you have to think differently. You literally have to think in terms of propagation is 6.5 gig, or you could use the same propagation as 5.8, and then understand how TDMA time slotting works, how the waveform looks for the more multipath conditions, the better it works, more robustness. You don't want too much line of sight. What else is there? There's a few other things that goes into it. So everything that the phone companies or the phone carriers have developed and tested over the years is now being applied in the broadcast environment in a different way. It's pretty cool.
Wow. What do you think about latency in these kinds of systems? Sounds like there are little bits of technology that are getting worked in here all involve a little bit of wait and transmit. I realize it's very short wait and transmit times, but looks like your transmitter's waiting in line a little bit, right?
The wait and transmit concept is about 2.5 nanoseconds. The throughput delay is about 3 milliseconds on the high side. Currently used here in New York City by a broadcaster for a live sports show every day of the week. And from talking to the engineering firm that installed the equipment, they told me they could not make the thing because they could not create enough latency in the system to cause the announcers miscues or hear themselves. It was seamless.
Okay. Well, it sounds like they got that problem. That won't be a problem then.
Yeah, no, it's
That
very fast.
latency anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few things they're doing under the hood. I'm still trying to find out, but on the telephone, most people don't tell you all the details. In person, though, they're more than happy to say things, and the body language pretty much makes it clear that you're going to keep it to yourself.
Okay. Well, it sounds like what you're telling.
You're on the manufacturer side. You know that you've had conversations at the booth, and you're like, come over here. Let me tell you more details. It's between us. I understand.
But it sounds like our takeaway from this conversation is if you have wireless mics, if you use wireless mics, you're either going to be using perhaps older technology at make sure that you're under 608 megahertz, because if you're above that, you won't be able to use them, and be open-minded about new technologies that are proven in other worlds, especially the cellular world. And are being proven out right now with the actual application with wireless mics, but be open to doing things in a different way than you've been doing it before.
Yeah, and remember the current systems, UHF systems that you may be using, you may be fortunate and you are below 608 megahertz, you can still use them. And even if you're near some other, maybe you're a couple of miles away from a TV station that's operating on the frequency, the FCC rulings offer some guidelines. If the signal strength is below, I think, minus 84 dBm in the noise floor of the TV station, you can still operate as long as you're operating like, I think, 20 milliwatts or something to that effect with your transmitter, whether it be wireless microphone or IFB. So if you are in a situation where the combination of signal strengths can work in your favor, then you need to think about, okay, how do I rethink the antenna systems? This is where people always mess up. They buy a wireless system, they just plug an antenna into the back of the receiver, or they stick a shark fin on a mount and stick it to the lighting grid of their studio. And they think, that's it, I'm done. Meanwhile, you're not taking into account the pattern of the antenna, where it's really sensitive and listening to. Is your transmitter in the primary lobe of the antenna? Odds are it's probably not. It's probably on a side lobe. Did you place the antennas near the window that can hear stuff outside of your building where you don't need any reception from? I proposed to one place, and they actually thought it was pretty cool, leaky coax. Think about it now. Think of it carefully. What if you use leaky coax? It's Radiax is the brand name, I think, that Philip Phelps, what do you call it? Cable wave used to call it, or cell wave. It's used in tunnels, subways, and stuff. What if you use leaky coax with the proper combiners and preamps like you normally do with a shark fin, and you run the leaky coax around your stage area? Now you could operate with the low power. You're always going to be near your person. And you can control with filtering how much outside signal strength comes in. So you could actually hone in and create a noise floor that's down around minus 120 dBm. And all of a sudden now you're the predominant signal and everything else is gone. I talked to an engineering company about that. And the guy was like, wow, never thought of it that way. Because they were thinking shark fins, little antennas and putting it here and doing this and that. I said, why not? It's designed to be mounted against a surface. So if you can mount the cable across your gliding grid against the metal, still functions, then you can still use it. Or maybe the column. Say you have a studio that has columns. It's a performance space. You can put in a little PVC pipe to make it look nice and just run it through. There's a few things you can do. But again, I'm just saying, don't just assume one thing now. With this repack, you really need to open up your mind and start thinking way out of the box on some stuff.
Wow, that's a great, the leaky coax I hadn't thought about actually running it around the set itself. So if you have a television set, for example, you can run the leaky coax right around the backside of the weather guy's green screen, or at the sports desk. You could actually run it in the desk, right? So the sports guy is standing right there, oftentimes with a monitor behind him, depends on the look of the station. But he or she will be within 3 feet of the leaky coax. With this wireless mic. And I guess you could run your IFB over the same technology, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Right now, I'm working with a place that is using combiners and splitters to do both the receive and transmit for their wireless system using traditional shark fin antennas and coax and whatnot. And matter of fact, talking with, who was it? I think it was the guys at Telex, RTS Telex. When I suggested that concept, the guy he said to me, well, that would actually be great, because in many parts of the country, in order for you to use anything wireless, it's going to have to be around like 20 milliwatts. Right now, your IFB packs or wireless mics, I think, have either 50, is it 50 or 100 milliwatts, 150, 250? It depends on which ones you have and where you are. And I think from what I'm reading, it looks like the power levels are dropping considerably. So if that's the case, what's the best way for a wireless system to function is to put the transmitter as close as possible to the receiver. So maybe the leaky coax is the approach where you could get the transmitter close enough that it should it should do what you need. If need be, you put a preamp in the system. Again, it's time to rethink and not just assume plug in an antenna, plug in a cable, and go. We don't have that luxury anymore.
Well, talking to some video production guys, one of the ways to overcome wireless mic problems is to use wired mics wherever you can. So if a lot of times we use wireless mics in places where we could use a wired mic, and I'm speaking mostly in television, but radio probably does it a bit too, where you have an interview, for example, 2, 3 people sitting down. You might use your wireless mics there, but hey, wired mics are pretty cheap. There's a lot of electronics that goes away when you use a wired lav mic, in a TV situation. So, of course,
wired microphones
in radio,
still in use. Wired microphones are still very handy, and a lot of people use them. But if you have to do a wireless solution, you just need to be a little more open-minded. And I can tell you, talking with 2 folks at 2 wireless companies I'm looking at regarding this replacement stuff, they were pretty clear about the fact there's a lot of folks out there who are just not interested in learning new tricks, but are demanding some kind of a solution. So it's like, well, either you learn the new tricks and you find a solution, or you retire early. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
So let me ask this before we take our next break, and that is, if there are literally thousands of people still using wireless mic systems in the 600 megahertz area that T-Mobile and other carriers are going to be getting, what's the consequence? What's the consequence to the wireless mic user, and what's the consequence to cell phone users or the cell phone company themselves? And obviously it's interference, but what interferes with what in this situation?
Well, from what I'm gathering, if you have until like 2019 or 2020 to coexist, depending on the interference level. So that's power level. That's a whole different thing. But if you're in a situation where currently there's a station that's already moved, or hasn't moved, I'm sorry, your FM, your wireless gear is above 608, say 653 megahertz, and it just so happens to be T-Mobile in that area turned on its cell sites or its its infrastructure. What'll most likely happen is your receiver will mute because it's not receiving any RF from your microphone with the little tone that tells it what to turn on and off if it's a digital or analog system. You'll either hear just wideband noise suddenly, digital noise, if that at all,
or it'll mute.
What else? That's or it'll mute, because a lot of the receivers, I mean, all the brand names, I won't mention them, but everybody knows they have their little pilot tone that knows how to turn on and off. It's like a tone squelch, so to speak. It'll be interfered with. Now, you may be in a situation where your wireless gear is close enough to the receiver, so your transmitter actually is close enough, so it may overpower the offending carrier, we'll call it. But it won't always work, because if you're moving around, you have the Doppler effect. All right, Doppler effect. You have picket fencing, or the ups and downs. You may hear a little burst of static and think it's something else, when the reality is it's the receiver trying to capture 2 different signals. It can't do that. That's what's going to happen. Now on the cell side, if you're a facility and you're operating in the band, I'm going to guess in like most cases, the cell phone will probably have trouble keeping its connection. Remember, cell phones can operate as low as minus 130 dBm. So they're very particular about their RF. They're very particular about the waveform. And I'm guessing what will happen is probably drop the calls. The cell site may respond or report troubles going on with the end user, the user equipment, the UE. And that may generate a report, and the cell carrier may start seeing these reports from cell site 2B and be like, what's going on over here? And they'll send a car out with the little RF sniffing gear. I've seen them do it a couple of times, and they'll see probably little spikes from carriers from the studio equipment. Or if it's intermittent, they may not be able to find it. It'll be that cat and mouse game for a couple of months. That's pretty much what's going to happen. I'm just basic RF principles. I'm not saying that I've done this and tested it and I've gotten reports from digital carriers. This is what's going to happen. This is an expectation. Let's just remember, we're talking RF capture, receiver, limiting the whole concept. In digital world, it's a little different, so it tends to crash harder.
Well, I think you hit one important point a moment ago, and that was the cell phones and the carriers' base station equipment operates in in a very low noise environment. In other words, they can put up with very low signal strengths, which radio broadcast engineers understand this with the problems that Verizon had with, especially it seems like it was stations in the lower part of the FM band, because what was it, their ninth harmonic was smack in the middle of some frequency that Verizon wanted to use. And the broadcast equipment, now we're talking high power transmitter here, high power FM transmitter, the broadcast equipment fully met its manufacturers and FCC specs. And yet that ninth harmonic was, wiping out gear at some Verizon sites. And so Verizon and broadcasters have had to work together or occasionally fight each other and then work together to resolve that situation. And I think we're going to find we won't have exactly that situation here, but the point is the cell carrier's equipment is really sensitive because it's trying to pick up a little tiny cell phone that may be 3, 4, 5, 6 miles away, and so a wireless mic transmitter on a frequency that they're interested in is going to make that part of the frequency unusable and cause a lot of wideband noise. I think you're right. Both parties could be subject to getting interference from the other and the gear just not working at all. I think I could be wrong. Let's hope I'm proved wrong, but I think there's a whole bunch of high school football teams out there with wireless mic gear that may be in the wrong frequency band, and I don't know how they're going to find out about this or be told about it, or even say, well, we can't afford. I mean, this is not in the budget. We'll have to go back to the Alumni Association and see if we can get some wireless mic gear. And who's going to make us get off of this frequency? By golly, we bought this stuff, So community theaters, house of worship, high school football, even college football, college sports. I think it's going to be there will be some pockets of mess for a while.
Well, you have to bear in mind that cell companies, your cell phone operates. When I was working with a project 3 years ago at the National Weather Service, we were chasing after some PIM, which is passive intermodulation. The reason why cell sites and a lot of RF connections now are the DIN connectors, the 7/16 connectors for the PIM specification. So if you're installing, say, a DAS system, distributed antenna system in a building for cellular purposes, or even land mobile, you now have to meet a specification for PIM emissions. And most connectors are great up to a certain frequency, and after that, they just fall apart. So I was in a building in New York City some time ago talking with a RF analyst for a carrier, and he explained to me that, we operate typically around minus 110, 120, and if the noise floor bumps up around minus 97, we start to drop calls, performance statistics start to go out the window, and I'm like, oh, that's your normal? He goes, yeah, it's our normal operating level. So if you're an FM broadcaster, as you pointed out with the LTE and the third harmonic, fourth harmonic, or any of the harmonics, and it reaches, even though we are at minus 80 and we're clear, minus 80 actually is well within the range of a cellular site. So even a half a mile away, you could easily impact them. I think Shively and ERI have filters, a cavity filter, something I could actually use to help minimize that. I think it lowers the harmonic radiation even lower. They were at the NAB. They were showing that they had a stand. It was just like this huge filter stub, just for LTE filtering. It said.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh my. But if you're dealing with, anybody who does RF, you're a ham operator, or if you're just an RF guy, does transmitter work, whether it's TV, radio, or land mobile, all too well what I'm talking about. If you've tuned up a duplexer or a combiner, your goal is to try and have isolation between transmit and receive at least minus 100 dB if you can, even greater. And depending on the number of cavities, depending on the size of cavity, the wavelength, the cavity, you might get 97 or maybe minus 88. So think about that. You're working with that kind of stuff and you're trying to make it work. Now take your little smartphone device, and in this device is a diplexer of multiple frequencies that have to operate, transmit, and receive. And how do you know this? Watch carefully when you have only 2 bars of signal and then you try to make a call. Notice the bars go from 2 to maybe 1, maybe 0. Can't make the call. Call failed. That's because it's saturating the front end of the receiver, the transmitter. So now the receiver can't see the cell site, therefore it can't keep the connection. That principle is what they're working on. So this is where you have to be very cognizant of these RF conditions with your wireless gear. Just saying.
A lot of information here, a little bit of speculation, a lot of information. And tell you what, Chris, we're going to continue with what you saw and learned at CCBE. And then I'll have a little bit of update. We have some pictures to show, too. So don't go away. We're going to hear from our friends at Innovonics through their dealer, Broadcasters General Store, as we continue with This Week in Radio Tech.
The Aaron 655 is the latest addition to the Innovonics family of rebroadcast receivers, designed specifically for FM broadcast translators, also referred to as relay transmitters. The Aaron 655 is unique as an uncompromising DSP-based HD radio and FM receiver combined with a powerful 3-band audio processor and dynamic RDS encoder. IP connectivity adds streaming capabilities, and a web browser interface gives you total remote control of the unit from any PC or mobile device. The Aaron 655 gives you maximum flexibility for program sources. Select program audio from analog FM, digital channels HD1 through 8, streaming sources, and analog or AES digital line inputs, all with assignable failover audio backup. The internal RDS encoder allows you to customize your RDS messaging. You can use incoming off-air RDS data, convert HD radio pad data to RDS, convert streamed metadata to RDS, or receive IP telnet data. Comprehensive audio processing includes gated and windowed AGC, a unique syllabic leveler, 3 bands of compression, and both wideband and independent HF limiting. Easy setup is achieved by using 10 factory presets and 10 customizable presets. The processor also supports day parting, allowing automatic preset changes to follow different programming formats throughout your broadcast day. The front panel has an OLED display and jog wheel with intuitive menus for easy setup, advanced control, and editing for all operating parameters. The Aaron 655 dynamic web interface gives you total remote control of the unit from any PC or mobile device. A comprehensive set of menus includes a quick overview of now playing info, input-output control, processor options, RDS encoder, alarms and notifications, SNMP settings, and much more. You can also listen to the live audio broadcast streamed through the web interface.
This is absolutely an amazing device, the Innovonics Aaron 655, and it's available from Broadcasters General Store. And you can reach out to them on the web at bgs.cc, like I'm doing right now, or you can call them at 352-622-7700. That's 352-622-7700. Put that on your speed dial, because you'll love talking to the friends, my friends, and soon to be yours if you're not ordering from them at Broadcasters General Store in Ocala, Florida. We sure thank them for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, it's Kirk Harnack and Chris Tobin with us. Chris went to the CCBE in Canada, just outside Toronto. And Chris, we've been talking about wireless mics, but I'm sure there may have been something about, I don't know, IP audio or the other interesting topics going on there. Anything else you want to share with us? And some pictures, too.
Well, it's funny you should say that. AOI-IP, audio over IP remotes, and STL linking was a presentation by Jacob Daniluk. And those of you who don't know who he is, he's the North American representative, and I think North and South American representative for Tie-Line codecs. And Jacob has come up to this event a couple of times now, and we have a good time. It was a great presentation. He explained, it wasn't a sales pitch for Tie-Line, so just full disclosure, he was very good about explaining the technology, the reasons why you do things a certain way, what to look out for forward error correction, for streaming duplication, for all kinds of things of that sort. And at the end, he'll pitch his product line. But he was more about talking about the technologies and the fact that everybody, the competitors included, all suffer from the same issues. It's just that everybody has a different approach to how to mitigate the issues of jitter, latency, packet loss. How do you create a diverse connection? He pointed out, he goes, well, you can have diversity in your building. And I've talked to many customers who've told me, well, I got a cable modem on one port of the box and the other port is a DSL. And then he asked the $10,000 question, both of those phone services coming into the building through the same pipe, or are they physically separate entry points? And then it's like, yeah, they'll go to crickets. And I only said, because he and I were having a conversation earlier in the day, his paper was on, I think it was Friday. And we were talking earlier, and I said to him, how many calls do you get for diversity that people think is diverse, but it really isn't? And he goes, "Oh, it's way too many." And it's tough because you try to explain to somebody, this is what you really need to understand. Now, if you can't get physical divergent entry points, then you have to find other ways to make sure you have a robust connection, maybe an SLA with the carrier, service level agreement that guarantee you a certain amount of time, downtime or uptime. That way, it becomes a financial burden for the carrier, not for you. I mean, granted, you may have an outage issue, but you would always come up with an alternate backup plan. And actually, a friend of mine called me recently and asked about, how do I do this at my transmitter site? It's very important we don't go off the air because of our program and what we do. But I only have one set of phone poles that carry both the fiber for the cable company and the fiber for the telephone company up to my transmitter site. I know all too well what's going to happen. So I told him, I said, why don't you do this? Take your cell phone, go up to the cell site, up to your transmitter site, and go outside, go up on the roof, and take your cell phone, take a look at the signal strength. And you know how you can call up what do they call that? The service mode settings, and you can look at the actual dBm. So I said, here's what you do. For an iPhone, you can do it this way. He goes, oh, okay, here's the code. And you can look them up. I'm not speaking like some special secret sauce thing. And I said, look at the measurements, walk around, do a complete square, like a 10-foot square walk if you can, and keep an eye and track the number and see what it does. See if it dips a lot. If it's within 3 dB, you should be fine. And then what he did was he did that. And I said, okay, what's the level? He gave it to me. I said, okay, that works. Now go to your cellular provider, find out what they'll charge you for a modem, SIM card for the modem, or you can buy your own, and a data plan, and tell them it's a business-to-business approach, and here's what you're doing with it. There's no voice. It's strictly data. It's machine-to-machine in some respects, you can call it, and see what they can offer you. You don't need lots of stuff. And so he did. So he has wired into the building, and he has a cellular modem as the failover. It's not on. It's in standby. And he can fall back to that. It's LTE, and he has the data rate. Since he's just doing audio only, it's fine. He doesn't need much of, if anything. And that's saved his bacon twice now during a storm.
Yeah.
So again, it's thinking out of the box approach. You got to think, okay, how do I do this and find a way that makes sense economically as well as business wise? If you will, to lose money, so be it. If not.
I've got a feeling that when 5G services start coming out and being more widely available, and then in a few years they'll be available practically nationwide, the cell carriers, I believe, are going to be offering fixed point internet services. So if you live in a rural area, or if you don't like the choice or choices you have at your home, you'd be able to sign up with one of the major carriers for 5G internet service. Now, it won't be gigabit, although I hear they can do that, but I don't think they can do that, I don't know. We'll wait and see. But I'm sure you could be able to sign up, for 20, 30, 40, 50 megabit service for your home through the 5G carriers when that's available. My point is that it does nothing but get better and better and better. And yeah, there's still cost involved, and maybe the cost is still high in some places or others. But like in American Samoa at our radio stations there, where we get 1.3 megabits guaranteed for $500 a month. So,
yes.
But
you can also look at local WISP too, wireless ISP, as an alternative. And many
at one of my transmitter sites, that's what we have. We have the IP radio link that I installed carrying LiveWire, and then we have a wireless ISP that's giving us 6 megabits down, and so I can use coded audio on that as backup.
Yeah, no, that's what Jacob was talking about in his presentation, and some folks, and he also delved into a bit, not 100% because the next presenter, I think the next day's Saturday morning's presenter was talking about SIP, but he talked about SIP protocols and how to use SIP in ways that you're not familiar with that would actually help get your remotes off, STLs, the whole bit. So it was great. It was a great paper on audio over IP, and it was video over IP conversations with SMPTE and a couple of the other papers. I didn't make it to all of them, but a couple of folks I talked with, they said it was very informative. And again, it's an eye opener because, if you're a TV person doing video, you're familiar with, what is it again? Oh yeah, SDI, BNC connector, 300 feet of cable, done, plug it in, go. Embedded audio, what do I have to worry about it? Now you're talking packetized audio and you got to time it. What's that mean? Oh, that's SMPTE 2110-3. Oh, PTP. Do you have a master clock? Which one's a master clock? Oh, which device is calling itself a master? Oh, I don't know. Okay, so these are all the things that are changing, and you got to sort of like decide, okay, if I'm going to do something, go through it all the way from start to finish. And that was part of Jacob's presentation, was to say, hey, whatever you're doing with whoever's box it is, I'm not going to, I don't care about it. I mean, you do care, but the fact is we all have to suffer the same, if you will, pitfalls of IP. how we deal with it is where you, as the customer, end user, makes the decision who you go with. And I thought that was a very nice way to put it, and it was smart. And there was a few folks in the audience that we all chuckled a bit and were like, okay. And Raul, I know you're out there and watching, so I'm just saying it's good to see that you're up there, and good to see you again from that other company. That's all I'm going to say. He knows who he is, and those of us listening and watching know exactly who I'm talking about. But I promised him I'd say hello. So
you have
Jacob.
I realize half of our listeners are listening only, but you got some pictures you want to share, I believe, from CCBE.
Yes. So speaking of audio over IP and IP infrastructure, and that was the other thing, that IP infrastructure is becoming now more of the mainstay, if you will, at these conferences, so which is good. So we did the AES 67, as you know. Anthony Kazub was with us last Thursday, and we did it live from the CCBE in a great workshop. So he set up a workshop. If you think of a conference room area, a large area with 4 tables, and there were 4 teams, and think of it as 4 islands of AES 67. There was audio laptops. There was laptops, both PC platform, if you will, and the iOS platform, Mac platform, and microphone preamps, which is the Wardbeck system. So it's Wardbeck Systems was sponsoring this, so that their mic preamps, the Primo, I think they call them, right? Is that right? And we had to figure out how to set them up. He basically gave instruction as to how to reset the switch to factory defaults. Once you do that, you just wiped out your IP addressing on that little table setup. And then there was, how do you get into the mic preamp? So this picture here, thank you, Suncast. This is a picture with several broadcast engineers. So up in the corner, the right-hand corner, the gentleman with the beard looking sort of over the shoulder of everybody from the doorway is Adam Robinson. He's the presenter, committee person. He took care of all the papers, and he popped in to see how things were going. This was Thursday afternoon. Thursday evening. The gentleman just to the left of him with the glasses looking down over the shoulder of 2 other men, that's Francois from Octave Communications. He's the RF guy I told you about. He's also well-versed in IP and other things. And then the gentleman at the table, the red shirt, is Wally Lennox. Those of you in Canada know exactly who I'm talking about. Wally's a great guy. And Wally and Beth, I know you're probably driving and listening, so it's good to see you again. I hope to see you guys next season, or if you come down to the States, say hello. The gentleman looking down at his phone, because we were looking for some IP information, is David Simon, formerly of Bell Media. And he and Wally are currently working on some projects. They're in retirement, and they're enjoying being able to get calls for jobs on their own terms. So congratulations, guys. And then the gentleman in the foreground on the left, the dog shirt sitting down, is Nat. I've met him several times. I cannot say who he works with, but another well-versed engineer. These guys are top of their game. So, if you ever cross paths with them, definitely take a moment to buy them a coffee and ask questions, or maybe they'll be willing to impart some knowledge. Good people. The gentleman in the background, the blue shirt with the long hair, that's Chris Robitaille. He works with Adam. The 2 gentlemen, again, I have to give kudos to for the presentation, the paperwork, the papers, the whole setup and how it was being done was excellent. It was a great 4 days of just 3 days of everything you needed. It was really, really good. And that was one of the workshops. There's another table, another shot of I think it's number 2 or AES 67-1 or whatever it is, which shows you the larger picture of the room, and that's coming in through the doorway, so you can see the tables in front on the right, and there's a large screen that Anthony was using to talk about the setting changes. And the CCBE former president, if you go back one picture, if you would, please, back that one. In the far left, where there's a green shirt, and just above there is a gentleman that's Denny. He is the former president of CCB, so I just got to give him credit because he helped to make things happen as well, and they did a great job. These guys it was a great, I'll call it a regional conference. So now I'll go to the next picture with the banana in it. So
okay,
this is what you get to see when you have breakfast in the morning. The breakfast is paid for through your signing up for the conference, and I just thought it was fun to show that every morning, or in the afternoon and evening if you want, there's a restaurant inside the facilities. This is a conference place, so everything is on site. You don't have to leave if you don't want to. So I just thought I'd throw that up there for fun. That's what you get to view when you're having coffee, maybe banana. I had eggs and bacon. Yes, I went full bore, and coffee, and that's what it looks like. So you can enjoy that. And then later in the afternoon, they roll out the barbecue grills, and you have some good stuff. So just so you can see there's some fun and difference. And then there's the awards dinner now, on Saturday night. On Saturday night of CCBE, it's very important to understand that on Saturday afternoon is the golfing tournament, and everybody who's a real golfer or not goes out and has a good time. And then there's certain carts that follow behind you with the various libations that keep the day afternoon fun. And at the end of that great afternoon, we have the awards dinner, and everyone who comes to the awards dinner, and you pay extra for that, and you get a ticket usually, and then they call out the number, and everybody almost everybody gets access to the awards table. There's like 4 tables of stuff, all kinds of tchotchkes, if you will. This year they did it a little differently. So that's Slimer, and that was one of the persons at the table I was at. His name got called. He went up to the tables and found what he wanted and put it back. I actually got called as well. I won something, and it was a set of 6 Italian glass tumblers that went with my Screech, which is Newfoundland rum, for those of you who don't know.
Okay.
It's also the official rum of, was it Come Away, the Broadway show about the incident in Newfoundland and that tragic shipwreck. So, that was, as you can see, we had a good time. And you get to meet
I didn't know what Screech was, but I kind of guessed because it sounds a bit like hooch. So you got hooch and you got Screech in there.
Oh, there's a tradition to it. Andrew Mulrooney of Davicom can tell you all the details. He's a newfie, and we every year we get together and he makes sure the bottles come down. And we hospitality suites are very important and very good. And I did get the chance to bring a bottle home, so I actually have a Screech on the counter right now. So tonight I can sit back and enjoy myself.
Hey, we're kind of running up against the clock here. Would you care if we look at 3 pictures from the SPE awards dinner?
Absolutely.
Last night, if we can get, okay. So there's yours truly, along with Mark Persons, who's been on our show before. Mark was honored by being the SB Engineer of the Year, and that's his wife, Paula Persons. Mark recently retired, and Paula did too. And Paula assisted. Mark ran the office for 4 decades. And Mark has a big history in broadcasting, as his father was very early broadcasters, beginning I think in the late 20s or early 30s in Minnesota. So Mark was honored last night. Let's see what else we have here. We'll bring Mark back on the show for another episode. There's Jeff Welton. Most everybody knows Jeff Welton. He was the Educator of the Year, honored by the Society of Broadcast Engineers. And we all know why, because Jeff gives wonderful presentations full of practical advice. If you don't heed Jeff's advice on installing and protecting transmitters, you do so at your own peril, because it's great, great advice. And I think we have one more picture. Think go boom. That's right. One more picture. There is Jerry Massey. Jerry is the immediate past president of the SBE, and Jerry just retired from, I want to say, 28 years at the same radio station cluster in Greenville, North Carolina. I hope it's not 38 years, but it's either 28 or 38, but I think it's 28 years. The same radio station cluster, and Jerry has an amazing past. And I heard one interesting story last night from Jerry's wife. Jerry's dear sweet wife, long suffering, with the radio station calling at all hours, with this gone wrong, that gone wrong, over 28 years. And when they were dating and they were betrothed, she was getting used to this as being kind of the norm for a broadcast engineer. And on their wedding day, an hour before the wedding ceremony, Jerry Massey got a call. We got a problem. You got to come help us. And his dear wife, or wife-to-be, said, no. You get somebody else. Not today, Buster. So, yeah, broadcast engineer wives know the score there, don't they?
This is true.
Yeah.
So hey, looks like you had a good time.
We did. We had the awards dinner was great, and we were out of time to report on much more from it. I can tell you I was in the board meeting for the Society of Broadcast Engineers on Tuesday night. The SB is doing just fine financially. It's great. Naturally, through attrition, membership is down a little tiny bit, so we're going to work on bringing in some fresh new blood, give some new incentives, and some new focus on a few things that may be of interest to younger engineers. And I think the Member Plus program, I'll give a plug to that, the Member Plus program, where you pay a higher annual membership fee, but all the webinars are included. That's been a resounding success. It has exceeded it's matched some of our highest expectations of what we might get in terms of people signing up for it. And hopefully it'll be even more next year. But the Member Plus costs a little more than twice as much for the membership, but you're not nickel and dime, so to speak, for attending webinars. And that has helped pay for the webinars, and it's just been terrific. You get all the current webinars and all the archive webinars too. So you no longer have to pay individually for those. So it's been a great program. Good for the SBE and good for those participating. Hey, we got to take a quick break, and we're going to hear from our friends at Lavo. We'll be right back with our tip of the week coming right up. Hang on.
There has probably never been a better time in history to buy a new radio mixing console. Today's consoles are more sophisticated than ever, with more features and functions than you can shake a stick at. But have you noticed how complicated they are? There's a sea of knobs and switches and displays and buttons. Some of them look like you might need a pilot's license to do your show. Well, a board doesn't have to be complicated to be powerful. Just look at the new Ruby mixing surface from Lavo. The first thing you notice is how smooth and streamlined it is. Ruby has lots of cool tech, but what it doesn't have is that confusing ocean of buttons that clutter things up. Now, we all know that there are some console features the jock only uses once in a while. So why dedicate controls to them? Ruby fixes this problem by moving those once-in-a-blue-moon controls to a touch-sensitive, customizable GUI that happily shares screen space with your other studio software, helping you fight control room clutter. Thanks to this design innovation, talent that use Ruby produce smoother shows with less errors. Controls that are used the most fall naturally to hand, while functions that rarely need adjustment are easily controlled with just a couple of clicks in the context-sensitive GUI. And Ruby has cool features you won't find on other boards, like Auto Mix, an intelligent gain writing function that guarantees the perfect mix for multi-mic morning shows and call-in segments. Dual mode snapshots that instantly switch the motorized faders between on-air and production modes, and enough DSP and I/O options to make even your pro sound pals green with envy. And because quality is as important to Lavo as it is to you, every console is proudly built to fanatically precise standards at Lavo's own factory in Germany. If you're ready to declutter your control room, do yourself a favor. Check out the new Ruby and the other cool Lavo radio tech at www.lawo.com/TWiRT.
When you go there, be sure you use that website, lavo.com/TWiRT. That'll take you right to the radio products pages, and it'll let Lavo know that we sent you. So, hey, we appreciate you visiting this website of any of our sponsors, TELUS Alliance, and especially the Omnia products that we've been talking about. Also, Broadcasters General Store at bgs.cc. Check out that Innovonics Aaron 655, an amazing box. If you need what it does, oh, my goodness, the best thing out there. And lavo.com/TWiRT. So it's time for a quick tip of the week, and I want to just pass along. Make sure you remember about this. If you're anywhere in the New York City area, or you want to make a trip there, whether it's a day trip for you, going by train, fly in, or drive there, you want to go to the AES show that's coming up in just less than 2 weeks now. It starts, and you can register for free. This Week in Radio Tech has made available for you an exhibits pass, and it also gets you into at least one of the sessions. I forget which one, but it's what you do is you go to aesshow.com, aesshow.com, and you go through the whole sign up and checkout procedure. And when you get to the checkout procedure, the code, all uppercase, I think that's what needs to work, is AES 18, as in 2018. So AES 18 TWiRT. That's all one, the AES 18 TWiRT. I'll put that in the show notes along with a link. And if you want to go, you can go at no charge, thanks to David Bialik and thanks to This Week in Radio Tech. So that is my quick tip of the week. We're going to be there. And as far as I know, Chris, we're doing our show from the Rattle and Hum bar like we did before. But if AES can accommodate us with guaranteed bandwidth, we might do it from the Javits Center. Not sure yet. That's kind of up in the air, but we'll see what works best.
All right. Well, Rattle and Hum is a great place to do it from.
Oh, yeah. And they have beverages there too.
Yes, they do. Well, my tip of the week.
Sometimes you need those beverages at the end of the long day, right when TWiRT starts. That's when you'd like to have one.
Well, we have to reach out to Mary Jo and Andrew, and we have to secure our bandwidth and tables at the Rattle and Hum, and then we'll have some good times.
Exactly. So what's your tip?
Week that I can offer up is it's for SBE, and it's the SBE webinars. So those of you in the audience, both watching and listening, if you haven't become a member of SBE, do so, and do so at the higher rate, okay, the membership plus, if you will, and allocate time every week, at least once a week, if not more, to pick a webinar and watch it, learn from it, and or refresh your knowledge of the topic. I say this because I did the RF 101, 102, what are they called? Transmitter stuff, RF principles and things, just as a refresher course. And it touched on a few things I had forgotten about. I was like, oh yeah, I should think about that. And the same thing is true with the IT seminars and the security IT and a few others. It's well worth it. Make the time. And some people may say, oh, I don't have time for this. I got to do other stuff. Well, you know what? You have a studio failure. Something goes wrong with the transmitter. How much time are you going to spend trying to figure out what the reason is? If you already maybe took the webinar, you may be looking at a symptom and go, I know what that is. I know what to look for. And you've saved yourself some time. I know it sounds crazy, but believe it or not, it does work that way. So give it a try. The SBE webinars are well worth it. I know the folks that host them and they present them. I've met a few of them, and they are top notch. And their ability to explain the technology in a very straightforward manner is what's key. I think you really should try it out. So that's my tip. Go for the webinars, go for the membership, then meet up with your local chapter and talk to folks, and you get access to some of the best engineering people in your market as an SBE member. Even if you're not a member, you can still go to the meeting, but the membership helps you because then you can reinforce the webinars after meeting some guy who's maybe a TV transmitter engineer for a top TV station or maybe a radio station. You go like, wow, I wonder what those guys do. Just saying.
Good idea. And yeah, you can get a whole education, a lot of it, by watching those SBE webinars. Yeah. And you know what? If there's somebody, if you work at a station with multiple engineers, at least one of those engineers needs to sign up for Member Plus. And I don't think the SBE would say a whole lot if that engineer made sure that his assistant engineers took part in watching some webinars. I think I'm safe in saying that.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? If you're a student of engineering and you're working at a local station, whether it's TV or radio, and you're currently at university or you're going through an education, and you're so on the fence about the technology, it's like, oh, wow, I work at a station. It's an AM directional station. I'm not sure what those things do out there, those big sticks and all these weird coil boxes. Well, there's webinars that can tell you about that and talk to you and explain it, and you'd be less intimidated, and you'd be willing to ask questions of the person who knows what's going on at the station. Or maybe it's a TV site, and maybe you're still working at a station that's got a klystron. Well, that's a doozy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's TV technologies that you can learn about and understand and go, oh, that's why they do it that way. Or the digital TV stuff and digital radio as well. There's a lot of things. I could pick probably a dozen topics. You'd be like, oh, that's it? Oh, there's a lot more. But I know a lot of folks I've met at SB here in New York City, Chapter 15, we've had a lot of folks come in who are not members, but are local, very young, up-and-coming technologists, and they ask questions like, well, what about this? What about that? We did a meeting at the World Trade Center, One World Trade Center recently, this last month, and a lot of folks that were there were not members, but they were people in technology-related jobs, and we had a few folks that were like, wow, you mean you could do that? I said, go to the website, SBE, and sign up, and then those webinars will tell you more about it, and they're like, oh. And during the meeting, one guy did that, looked at it, he's like, that's exactly what I need. Thank you very much. So I'm just saying, pass it along. It's well worth it.
It sure is. And if you want to know about, even you talk about AM directionals and klystrons, and a lot of us think of those as older technologies, although still in use, you need to know about it. But if Wayne Pacina does great webinars on internet safety, firewalling, pen testing, making sure that your site is as safe as it can be from bad guys. So everything from the old to the new is there. Hey, we got to go. Chris, I really appreciate you reporting about CCBE. Thanks for joining us as always. It's great to just spend an hour chatting with you.
Oh, my pleasure. Like I said, it's a great event. So those of you here in the Northeast that have much easier access than many other folks, I'm sure, across the country, definitely worth giving it a try. It's every September. It's at the end of the month. It's well worth it. ccbe.ca. Check it out, and you'll have a great time. Guaranteed. There is no doubt about it.
All right. And you might get some Tim Hortons while you're up there. Hey, I want to thank you, Chris, for being with us. And thanks to Suncast for being our producer today, doing all the switching and getting all the pictures up. We appreciate that. And also Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ network. And we got what we coming up next week. Let me take a quick look and see, because I should have already had this ready to go. So hang on, give me a sec here. Okay. We have audio processing trends and AES 192, which I didn't always know how amazing this is, what it can do for you performance-wise on your radio station using AES 192 as the connection from the processor to the exciter. Amazing stuff. More benefits than you'd think. That's with my colleague, Paul Kriegler. Paul is an audio processing expert. He does come from the world of radio programming, but man, he knows his stuff with audio processing. So Paul Kriegler is going to be here on the show next week. And then coming up a week after that, we're going to be at Rattle and Hum, as far as we know. And then 3 weeks from now, Jim Grum Graham, the hilarious engineer with a lot of experience under his belt. He's going to be with us on the show as well. So, hey, we got to go. Thanks again, everybody. Be sure you visit our sponsors. Let them know that we sent you. Be very appreciated. And we'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.